Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and in one of my last videos I showed you this article from the New York Times. Banks tried to kill crypto and failed, and I was thinking about this article, and they've got a picture of Jamie Dimon from JPMorgan right there on the cover, and a video I had put out from Joseph Lubin just popped in my head, and I had to show it to you because I don't think these people ever thought they were going to kill it or wanted to kill it. I think these are the same people that created it. And I include Bitcoin in that. I don't think Bitcoin was created by some libertarian in his bathrobe. I think it was created by governments. I've told you that for a long time. Governments / the banks. Okay? Now, I have proof right here. I have proof that they never had any intention to kill it. Watch this video right here and you just decide for yourself.
JPMorgan started paying attention to Ethereum blockchain technology even before public mainnet was released.
Okay, their public mainnet was released in 2014. If you go back to this article, they reference in 2014 as regulators. They go on about how Jamie Dimon is at. Meanwhile, Jamie Dimon's JPMorgan is already. I'll start from the beginning. They're already behind the scenes working with Ethereum.
JPMorgan started paying attention to Ethereum blockchain technology even before public mainnet was released. So they started experimenting and building out some things when we were still building proofs of concept. They had a handful of different teams that focused on blockchain technology, and we've interacted with them roughly from the start. We started to interact with them in a really concerted way around the time of the advent of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So we were two of the major drivers of that initiative.
Okay, so JPMorgan and Consensus were the two major drivers of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and JPMorgan was already experimenting with Ethereum before it even launched, folks. And now listen to this part, because it's not just JPMorgan.
And have been two of the major drivers of activity inside the EEA since launch, really.
The Ethereum team is really one of the most remarkable.
Now remember, this is Charles Hoskinson who created Cardano, but he also was one of the founders of Ethereum, so he was there from the start.
We had the privilege of working on. It's a wonderful mix of both old and new. There's some senior software developers, people who work for Goldman Sachs off Wall Street. We have very young entrepreneurs on the team, older entrepreneurs.
The official father of the Digital Asset Investor channel, my dad, has told me the whole time I've had this channel, nothing happens without JPMorgan and Goldman Sachs. And so he's always told me, you look for JPMorgan and Goldman Sachs while you're doing this. And that's what I've done. And they're everywhere you look. Okay, here's a little reminder from James Rule. A reminder that Coinbase and Brian Armstrong have your Songbird tokens. And he's got the screenshots of how the Coinbase wallet has claimed the Flare, and so they in essence have also claimed the Songbird. He's got all the screenshots here. We're not going to let this go, folks. Coinbase has already been warned multiple times by multiple people in social media. To my knowledge, they haven't even given a real good response. If I were Coinbase, I would not hold on to that Songbird. That's just me. Okay. This is interesting. This is Anna Botan from Banco Santander. I want you to listen to what she says.
Now, it's only down to execution.
How do you see the fintech space actually changing in the next 5 to 6 years? Is it payment the next big thing, or is there something else that needs to be disrupted?
I think the next big thing, which is already here actually, is crypto. So I think that is it's already happening. We talk a lot about the CBDC, central bank digital currencies. The fact is you already have around 100 billion of stablecoin US dollar fiat currency, digital currency in the US today, unregulated outside the system. And so how do we think about that? There's a huge amount of innovation happening, and in an area that is very much systemic. It's about monetary policy and, how that gets managed, whether it's inside or outside the system.
So how do you look at crypto? And actually, do you have to be, as a chief executive chairman, a believer of crypto to be able to write, have the right products for your customers?
Well, we are sort of a leader in crypto. We issued the first end-to-end bond on the blockchain, which is a technology behind crypto. We have a very strong group, not huge, but strong group on that. And the big thing is, how will central banks want to manage this? Will they manage it themselves? Will they create a framework and tell us how to do it? Will they do nothing? I think they will be working with us, with the banks. And it's also what role we want to play in that value chain, right?
Okay, so that's an interesting, and by the way, she is a Ripple partner, worthy of note. Now, this is interesting. Real XRP Boy, who is a definite follow at boy_XRP, put out a good string of videos. Listen to this.
In a second, but I want to challenge the premise that Wyoming doesn't care about investor protection, because you're going to see that when our rules for digital asset custody are released, which is imminent, it will blow people away about the investor protection that comes in it. New York focuses on the wrong things, allows tremendous fraud to occur in markets, doesn't care about solvency, but does care about things that don't matter as much, like anti-money laundering, right? We just talked about the fact that there really isn't that much crime, but there's all these compliance costs we're slamming on all these financial institutions. But yet, by the same token, we're allowing rehypothecation of assets out the back end. So BIS, I believe it is.
Sorry, can you just explain that word?
Yes, rehypothecation.
A lot of people haven't heard that.
It allows assets to be repledged as collateral for loans. And what that means is the first time an asset is pledged as collateral for a loan, you take a mortgage out on a house, that's great. You know that you're not creating more than one claim to that asset. The moment that asset is repledged for an additional loan, and then repledged and repledged and repledged and repledged and repledged again, no one knows how collateralized those loans really are. And what it means is that you've created multiple claims to the same asset. The IMF estimates that there are 3 claims for every U.S. Treasury bond that is outstanding. Right? And the way the accounting works is you'd never be able to pull that out. This is one of the things that CFTC Chairman John Carlo is very, very focused on, because you are not able to see at a systemic level whether the system is solvent. Each individual financial institution may look solvent because they're all claiming ownership to the same Treasury bond, but if we could actually pull out all that double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, et cetera, counting of the same asset, you would probably see that the system's not solvent.
Yeah, I mean, this should sound familiar, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like how a financial system comes crashing down.
Yeah, and as long as it's liquid, then no one really knows how big that hole is, right? But the one thing about crypto assets that makes me so optimistic is that if I can own them directly, I don't have to worry about how many other people have claims on my same asset.
Exactly. Okay, and then this is another clip from the... Actually, I'm not going to play that one. I wanted to play this one. Listen to this.
Thank you for the interesting discussion. You were now talking about the federal laws in the US. Shouldn't you be talking about international regulation and trying to find a set of international regulatory framework? Because, I mean, this is what the whole topic is about.
Yeah, the same problem we have with several state regulators having jurisdiction over you, we have with several international regulators having potential jurisdiction over you.
So
it's hard.
I think you're right as a general matter. Having spent some time over 20 years thinking about and participating in federal international forums and so forth, I think the challenge here, again, it's still a relatively new and relatively small asset class. I would say there are international agreements largely around this broad illicit activity bucket, if you would say. Most countries, not all, most countries want to get it somewhere inside of the envelope of the bank, the equivalent of the Bank Secrecy Act around the globe. Where there's the greatest difference, the greatest disparity is around securities laws and investor protection, partly because of black letter laws different in the US, Canada, and believe it or not, in Taiwan. They all have the Howey test because the words investment contract are somehow in their black letter law. In most jurisdictions, the two words investment contract are not in the definition of a security. And so you start to get a different approach. And it's very hard to take this to a parliament or a legislative body because by and large, in large population centers, it can't be a dominant issue. In Gibraltar, in some small population centers, you've seen laws actually enacted. But in large population centers, most legislators are saying, why am I dealing with this? It's not as important as healthcare or other really pressing matters of the day in a political.
Make no mistake, folks, what he just said there, he's fully aware of how hard it is to get Congress to act on this thing. That's the reason they did this Ethereum free pass the way they did it, is because they knew that it would keep XRP and all these other digital assets in this purgatory long term, and they knew how much pressure would have to be created. That's why it's so important, the John Deaton lawsuit, that's why it's so important for all of us to be out here applying pressure to the situation, because I think that the bad guys involved in this whole thing, I think the bad guys knew exactly what they were doing. I think that it was done intentionally, create this quasi safe haven for Ethereum when they knew damn well it was centralized and all the other is all bullcrap, and they knew it. Gary Gensler knows it. He knows it as he sits there in front of Congress today. He literally I remember when he said almost with a smirk on his face, he's like, well, Congress could always pass a law, and he knows how hard it is, and he knows how split the Congress is, and I think that's what the plan was all along. These people, they knew they could create this little wedge and let a Bitcoin and Ethereum through the door, and then just play this stupid game that he's being allowed to play with. Oh, I'm not going to comment on any specific digital asset. I mean, come on. They ought to be hauling all of these people before Congress. All these people from the Venture Capital Working Group, all these people should be hauled up. They should have Chris Giancarlo, who I think is one of the good guys. They should have him. All of these guys were involved in that discussions, and in all the discussions, the CFTC, the SEC, Consensus, all those people in the Venture Capital Working Group, they were all the ones that were involved in planning what was eventually the Bill Hinman speech. And it created a quasi-clarity for just Bitcoin and Ethereum. And they should all be put in front of Congress and made to explain what they were trying to do. Those people from Andreessen Horowitz that put the group together, people from Perkins Coie, Cooley was in there. The other law firm was McDermott, Will, and Emery. Then you had the two other guys that were in there. Anyway, I'll put the timeline's not going away. I'm going to keep retweeting it until somebody does something here. We're not leaving till we have a level playing field, and someone intentionally geared this so there wouldn't be one. Now, what you're looking at right here is Chris Giancarlo's book. I was flipping through it last night. It's called CryptoDad. And this is the section where he talks about how they were meeting. I directed my internal crypto team to begin working on digital asset issues in a focused manner alongside our colleagues at the SEC. Mike Gill, Daniel Gorfine, Amir Zadi, Jamie McDonald began a bi-monthly informal meeting with the SEC's Bill Hinman. Now remember, when Bill Hinman gave that speech on Ethereum, in court, he said it was under a signed affidavit. It was his personal opinion, folks. They're having bi-monthly informal meetings with Bill Hinman and astute senior advisor for digital assets, Valerie Chapinick, and others. Though they were now literally thousands of virtual currencies, it was becoming clear that two key ones were likely commodities, Bitcoin and Ether. while Bitcoin, Ether's a digital currency. Anyway, so they're having these meetings about this. Then he goes on in this part, and he says, on June, staffs of the CFTC and SEC cannot speak with authority on behalf of either commission. Only those matters voted upon by respective commissions are authoritative. Still, staff divisions can issue no action letters and staff guidance without formal action of the full commission. The opinion of a division director can be forceful, even if couched as spoken not on behalf of the commission. So Chris Giancarlo is telling you that, yeah, they can call it Bill Hinman's opinion, but it carries weight. It carries a weight that tells the market that this is the way it is. And that's what he's saying here. And he says on June 14th, 2018, the respected, I think I'm going to vomit on my computer. The respected head of the SEC's Division of Corporate Finance, Bill Hinman, flexed some of that muscle at a finance conference. He stated, based on minor, we know all this. And then it says, Hinman's statement was a milestone in the crypto evolution on non-confirming Ether in confirming Ether alongside with Bitcoin as two important crypto assets under CFTC jurisdiction, while it would still take time for the CFT to be comfortable with some quirky aspects of Ether. Anyway, it led to the futures. This is the guy that was running the freaking CFTC, folks, and he's telling you that Hinman's speech led them to be able to do Ethereum futures. If anything tells you that Hinman's speech was guidance to the market, that does. Okay, but we know much more of what went on now. Let me make sure of where. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm going to play you this. I put this clip together to make a point. Warren Davidson, this is back July 17th, 2019. I think it's pretty clear here that neither Warren Davidson nor Gary Gensler think there's clarity in the market, but Gary Gensler thinks that you can't give the market clarity.
However, that regulatory framework, as Mr. Muirs has pointed out, has driven a lot of companies to find certainty in places like Switzerland or Singapore. Would a bright line test that says if it meets this test right here, we know that it's a security, and if it falls on the other side of that, we know that it's not. Would that provide the certainty the market needs?
I think that it could, but it could also provide certainty for ways for good lawyers to cleverly work around it. So I think
so we can't give clarity because then lawyers will figure out a way to get around it. So we can't provide clarity. But now he sits in front of Congress and says, "Oh, it's very clear."
Supreme Court Howey test, or just in the last few weeks, the SEC put out a lot of guidance in this area. It's been slower than I think we want. I'll agree with that. But I think they're slowly, under Chairman Clayton, trying to give some certainty to this area.
Right. So Bill Hinman's provided a lot of that. And unfortunately, that's not really, I appreciate their efforts, but frankly, that's Congress's job to provide that certainty. And if we just want to live with a court decision, Howey, and apply, the Orange Grove test to things, if you're swinging an Orange Grove hammer, a lot of things look like an Orange Grove. Talking to one other principle that you talk about, so we've provided that in a group of bipartisan folks in the Token Taxonomy Act. And it lays out a 4-part test that if it meets this, then you can know. You don't have to go on a case-by-case basis and pre-clear your idea with the SEC, and maybe you talked to the right person, and maybe you didn't, or maybe you could spend as much on lawyers as Facebook did. Maybe you got 2 years before you need to launch, but maybe you don't. And a lot of companies have just sat down and talked to me and said, look, no offense, we don't trust you guys. We're going to launch this in Switzerland.
Okay. Now, I'll get into that next in the next video. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that Gary Gensler knew that there was no clarity back on July 17th, 2019, and he knows today that there's not. There is no clarity by design, and Gary Gensler knows it. Thanks for listening.